Yeah, I'll say it. I think Basil from the hit indie RPG Omori is gay as fuck. Fucking shit. Alright. Okay, seriously. I genuinely believe you can view this character so easily through a queer lens, and it's not just because he's a pastel uwu flower boy. Oh god, there's so much more to it. I'm gonna try and concisely explain why so many people headcanon him as gay, or transmasc, or non-binary. Mostly gay though, although all interpretations are valid. Man's gonna be the whole alphabet soup. It's pretty rad, honestly. I'm not saying you have to think he's gay, but people are out here saying the Omori community is forcing sexuality onto him as if the headcanon has no merit in the text of the game, or that seeing him as anything other than straight forces politics and sexuality onto a game that isn't about such things, which honestly is a super damaging opinion to have. Before we get into this though, disclaimer, if you don't think he's gay and think Basil is totally cishet, good for you. That's valid as hell, do whatever you want. I'm not here to shove my gay agenda down your throat. I'm just saying that if you look at Basil through the lens of queer theory, there's a lot of interesting things that come up. On top of that, yes, I do use the term queer in a reclaimed manner in this video. I'm a queer person, and although the term has a pretty negative history, so does the word gay to some extent. If you don't like the usage of the word queer in a reclaimed manner though, that's totally understandable and you can click off this video. I love you. Mwah. And also, I'm probably going to be looking off into the corner and reading my script so many times in this fucking video. Oh my god, okay, let's try and look at Basil through the lens of queer theory. Okay, let's go.
1. Gender expression.
I'm gonna get this one out of the way because it's the thing detractors like to use the most to shut down the headcanon. Oh, you think Basil is gay because he's shy and wears flowers in his hair. Yeah, kind of. I'm not gonna lie, it's a contributing factor for me. It's not the main reason myself and many others carry the headcanon, but I think it's important to unpack the nuances of the argument. In many bits of promotional art and dialogue scenes from the game, it's shown that Basil has a lot of non-traditionally masculine hobbies. He's shown to be comfortable doing things like combing and styling Aubrey's hair or making flower crowns, and his trademark hair accessory is a pink flower. This is most likely a result of growing up with his only parental figure being his grandmother, and a lot of people also mistake him as being a girl when they first play the game, which honestly is the most gender non-conforming shit, and I want it. Give me your gender, Basil. Basically, he displays a lot of out-of-the-box or odd characteristics that remind a lot of queer people of how they were like when they were kids. This is backed up in canon as it's implied that Basil didn't have any friends before Aubrey invited him into the group. He never mentioned any friends before the group. He's a more sheltered person, and he's out here taking pictures of the things he says he's most afraid to lose, and they're all of his most recent friends. Like, that kind of proves the point that he was on his own before Aubrey. Either he felt like he couldn't connect to other people, or God forbid he was getting bullied for not expressing his gender properly. Being a gay, who is friends with many gays, I can attest to this. There's a universal queer experience of feeling like the odd one out, who likes things that are seen as unconventional for your gender. It's less of a, oh, he likes flowers, therefore he is gay, and more of a, the way he expresses his gender and his interests reminds me a lot of my experiences growing up not knowing that I'm gay. And let me clarify, having non-masculine hobbies does not automatically make you gay, obviously. I think Hiro's a great example of this. He's into non-traditionally masculine things like cooking and cleaning, and he's overall in touch with his sensitive side. And yet, he still dated Mari, showing that he's at least attracted to women. Same Hiro. So why Basil and not Hiro? Well, okay, let's address the elephant in the room.
2. Basil is in love with Sunny! I yell as the crowd boos. They're right, chimes a voice, and the crowd turns to look at him. It's Basil Omori, in the flesh.
Okay, let me try and justify this in a way that doesn't highlight my obvious biases. It's at least canon that Basil is very fond of Sunny. They're canonically best friends. Not just friends like stated with the rest of the group, they are besties. Basil instantly gravitates towards him because they're both shy and soft-spoken, and it's shown that Basil is most comfortable opening up about his problems towards Sunny, trusting him on a level that implies a deeper bond between the two. We don't know too much about how Sunny regards their friendship, but we do know that he is closest to Basil compared to the rest of the friend group. Minus Mari, obviously.
Okay, side note, I forgot to mention, which I literally have no idea why I forgot this. This detail is the cutest ever, but a lot of official art of Sunny or Omori with Basil has him wearing a flower in his hair. Aside from the day where everyone makes flower crowns together, Sunny is the only person who wears a flower in his hair sometimes, aside from Basil. Because Basil is the one most associated with flowers, it's safe to say he's always putting flowers in Sunny's hair as a little friendly gesture. You know, just your average bestie behavior.
Either way, this isn't a video about whether or not there are mutual romantic feelings between the two. This is just a video focusing on Basil. Even though a lot of shit in Headspace indicates that Sunny may or may not be a bi-disaster pining after both Aubrey and Basil, but that's another thing that we can get into in another video. Actually, I don't want to do another video on that. Maybe, I don't know. Back to Basil and his homoerotic feelings of camaraderie towards Sunny. Let's talk about flowers. Oh boy, it's white tulip time. In the language of flowers, white tulips represent forgiveness, respect, purity, and honor. Omori as a whole is a game about forgiveness. Not only forgiving others, but forgiving yourself too. Okay, but that's not gay. Correct. But what if I told you that the tulip in all colors represents love? Combine the innocence and purity of the white tulip with the general flower language of tulips, meaning love, and you get something akin to an innocent young love. And that doesn't even touch on the actual things Basil says about white tulips in regards to Sunny.
And these are white tulips. Tulips aren't very flashy plants. They're not too big or small, not too elaborate or flamboyant. If I could put it in any other way, I guess I would say that they're comfortable, simple, modest, and perfect. Just like Sunny.
Basil, oh my god. This is gay yearning on a level that's so hard to handle. You don't just associate your boy best friend with a flower that represents innocent love, proceed to call him perfect in the same breath, and say it with such fondness without having some sort of romantic feelings towards him. There is literally no heterosexual explanation for this. Okay, so that's white tulips. Let's talk about sunflowers now. In the language of flowers, sunflowers represent loyalty and adoration. Again, not super gay until you take into account what sunflowers mean in the romantic language of flowers. When put through a romantic lens, the loyalty and adoration transforms into unwavering faith and unconditional love. Add that with how Basil refers to Sunny as a tulip because he is comfortable, modest, and perfect, and you have a bouquet of gay feelings and subtle decorations of love. Also, let's quickly add that Basil wants to see himself as a sunflower, a plant that always faces towards the sun. Of course, the reason why he says this is because he wants to see the brighter side of things, but come on. Always face towards the sun? Yeah, Basil, you're always holding hands with your son too. You ain't slick.
3. Basil is named after a character from an extremely homoerotic novel written by a gay man.
That's basically it on that one. It's not outright confirmed that Basil from Omori is named after Basil from the picture of Dorian Gray. However, in the demo version of the game, there's a shelf of books that are said to be written by Dorian Gray, and both Basils have some character traits in common too, like having a tendency to put the subject of their affections on unhealthily high pedestals. Oh god, oh fuck, wait!
4. Basil's feelings for Sunny are extremely complex and messy, but hoo boy if that isn't an average symptom of gay yearning.
So I've never met a single queer person who hasn't had an extremely complicated and messy attachment to a close friend, only to realize later down the line that they were actually in love with them. If you're queer and haven't experienced this, please do tell me. You'd be in the fortunate minority though. There's something about growing up not knowing that gay people even exist that makes it hard for you to wrap your head around why you would feel so strongly about a friend of the same gender. Being a game set in the late 90s to early 2000s in a small religious community, it's pretty safe to say that Basil probably wasn't, and maybe even still isn't, aware that you can have romantic feelings for anyone other than the opposite sex. You end up growing an unhealthy attachment to that friend. Relying on them on a deeper level than possible, giving a piece of yourself to them, always staying by their side, doing whatever it takes to see that smile that makes you feel warm inside. Yeah, I think I'm making it pretty clear that I've experienced this for more than one gal pal too. What I'm trying to say is that Basil's attachment to Sunny when viewed through a queer lens can easily be explained as him being in love with Sunny and not knowing how to express it properly due to growing up in a small and suffocating community. And that's without taking into account the shared trauma from the incident.
5. The incident.
Yeah, all that I've been mentioning earlier, that's without taking into account what happened with Mari on the day of the recital. If Basil didn't have a messy romantic feelings for Sunny before, oh boy, are they messy as hell now. If it was anyone else who witnessed the incident, things would have gone much differently. It's because Basil has this strong attachment to Sunny that he makes justifications in his head to paint him as someone who could never do something so cruel, even by accident. It's because Basil wants nothing more than to see the person he cherishes the most being okay, that he offers to cover up the murder so Sunny won't get blamed or tried in court or, God forbid, locked in prison. Basil then keeps this truth so secret that he makes up a monster to paint Sunny as that innocent person he admires so much. He doesn't say a single thing for fear of any of the blame falling onto Sunny. He endures all the bullying from Aubrey, even though he knows deep down that Sunny was the person who blacked out the photo album, not Basil, and definitely not the something that Basil sees behind Sunny. By the time we find Basil in the first real-world section of the game, he's already fully convinced himself that the monster he sees behind Sunny is real. Basil's mental state deteriorates throughout the course of the game. Although the circumstances behind this have nothing to do with the theoretical romantic feelings he has for Sunny, it does explain what he does and why he does it. I think it's pretty obvious to see from anyone watching this that I love the way Basil's written. So seeing people reacting to a character who's clearly traumatized and suicidal by saying he's annoying, whiny, unbearable, and a bad person, yeah, that shit makes me really upset. A lot of people who dislike Basil either find all the gay headcanons unbearable, or think he's some flavor of queer, but unworthy of love and forgiveness. I want you to genuinely ask yourself, would I be mentally okay if my best friend shut me out for 4 years after experiencing something traumatic together? Would I be mentally okay if I had to endure all this bullying from someone who used to be a good friend just because of a misunderstanding that I can't explain? Would I be mentally okay if I had to watch the person who raised me slowly die over the years while I have to suffer through my trauma and mental illness alone? Would I be mentally okay if my best friend returned only to tell me that he'll be leaving me behind, just like everyone else seems to do? I'm sorry, but a teenager with so many heavy burdens on his shoulder isn't going to be bearable. As someone who's experienced a serious loss around the same age as Basil witnessed the incident, I can empathize with how that shit fucks with your brain. And I didn't even go through nearly as much shit as Basil did. There was no way for him to unpack all of this in a healthy way, and that's why the fight on the final night happened. But this isn't really an essay about how Basil is a misunderstood character who gets way too much shit from the fandom. I don't think I'm cut out to unpack all of that, nor do I have the time to fully analyze every aspect of his character, as much as my brain rot desires to. If you want to see someone explain Basil's mental state in better terms than I ever could, there'll be a link in the description of the video to an actually good Reddit post analyzing why he acts the way he does, and why calling him annoying or dumb or whatever y'all say is extremely damaging and disregards the entire point of the game. Okay, moving on. That was really dark there.
6. Is Sunflower a valid ship?
Yes.
7.
Okay, I'll elaborate. There seems to be an uptick in people who dislike the romantic pairing of Sunny and Basil because it's toxic and codependent. From my experience in the fandom, lurking for a few months after the game came out, making one piece of fan art, entering a cryo sleep for 2 years, and then waking up to a more fully formed fandom, I noticed that Sunflower went from one of the most popular and common ships to a ship that's still popular but is seen as invalid or toxic by its detractors. Before I go into why it really isn't as toxic as people make it out to be, I'm just gonna go out and say it. Liking a romantic pairing because of its toxic implications is valid, actually. I'm not saying that a toxic interpretation of Sunflower doesn't exist. Because, oh boy, I know there is, and I consume that shit like the finest cuisine. Some people aren't shipping characters because they think they represent a romantic ideal to follow in their personal lives. Some people use the escape of fiction to explore fucked up dynamics as a way to cope with trauma, or to quell a morbid curiosity that exists in literally everyone's head. At least I kind of hope it exists in everyone's head. With that, there comes a responsibility to engage in the content in a way that is thoughtful and doesn't promote unhealthy dynamics in the real world. Whether or not people are engaging in the media responsibly, though, has nothing to do with the validity of such interpretations of fiction. But then there's the people who do see Sunflower as their romantic ideal, wanting the Basil to their Sunny and vice versa. What about those guys? Are they romanticizing a toxic dynamic? No. They're simply interpreting the pairing from another completely valid angle. To put it simply, the main through line of Omori is forgiveness and growth. The cutscene and the secret ending implies that telling the truth sets both Sunny and Basil free and onto a path of emotional healing. Will the process be quick? No. Is it possible for the friend group to forgive them? I think so. When it's put that way, don't you think the idea of healing together from shared trauma and coming out the other end a better person is kind of poetic and beautiful? I'm not saying they should date right away. Hell no, that's stupid, and literally no one who ships the wholesome interpretation of post-game Sunflower thinks that. So what about the healthier Sunny ships, you may ask? And to that I answer, healthier? All of the Sunny ships have some serious mental hurdles to overcome before even becoming remotely healthy. And let's go through them. Sunburn. Aubrey will most likely not take the truth in a very empathetic way, at least not right off the bat. Pun not intended. She has some serious anger issues and violent tendencies to overcome before a relationship between her and Sunny can be remotely healthy. And this applies to Photobomb too, to an even greater extent, if I'm being honest. Suntan. So this one is the most commonly interpreted as the healthiest Sunny ship, which in my opinion kind of undermines how complex Kel's trauma is. He's dealing with grief in such an unhealthy way that I don't even think he realizes he's grieving, and on top of that, he's undermining his own emotions as being less important to the others who's experienced the loss no matter how close to Mari he was, and I promise I'm not projecting. What I'm trying to say is that even though Kel and Sunny have this silly bromy dynamic, which trust me, I also think is cute as hell, I don't feel like Sunny would be able to really take Kel by the shoulders, shake him, and yell, "Your concealed trauma is literally eating you alive!" Again, this applies to Cactiflower too. And before anyone says I'm simply a close-minded sunflower truther, I will have you know that I fucking adore Cactiflower, as much as I do with any soft jock, ex-cute, but a little crazy actually dynamic. I need to draw them sometime, holy shit. So I think that justifies that Sunflower isn't that much more toxic than people make it out to be. What else am I irked by in this fandom?
8. Your argument that calling Basil gay is homophobic is wrong, actually.
The way I see this weird and backwards take all over Reddit and spaces that disregard queer headcanons, oh my god. Okay, so the argument goes like this. People seeing Basil as gay are enforcing the stereotype that gay men are all soft, ooh-woo, meek femboys with no backbone. This in turn damages the reputation of the gay community. I will say it, when you first hear this, it makes sense in a way. Breaking stereotypes and enforcing well-done representation is a huge key to wider queer acceptance. But I'm sorry, the people who are using this argument don't really care about queer rep. They're just mad that gay people see themselves in a fictional character with an undefined sexuality. Be honest, if Basil was a cis girl, Sunflower would be everyone's fave yandere waifu ex-milquetoast anime boy ship, and Basil isn't even a yandere to begin with. The majority of people with queer headcanons are queer people themselves, starved for content because it's so hard to find good queer rep in popular media. I say popular because there is so much amazing queer fiction out there. That is my shelf of... That's my shelf of Yuri manga. It's my pride and joy. But yeah, there's so much amazing queer fiction out there. People just aren't giving it enough attention because the corporations licensing these stories have little faith in them to begin with, leading to shitty marketing and no attention except for the audience of silly gay people who will latch onto any crumbs that are thrown their way. So yeah, when we see a character in a popular piece of media that expresses their gender in a way that's familiar to us, with feelings for a friend that come off as a little more than friendly, we say, he just like me for real. Whether intentional or not, the queer coding for Basil is there. Just like how mental illness isn't specified in Omori, but depicted in a way that we know it's present. The queer undertones are obviously that, undertones, and they're not as important as the message of mental health in the game, because the game itself is literally about mental health. But the queer undertones are there. Omori is a game about relationships, whether platonic, romantic, or familial. It's a game about how these relationships are complicated and can fracture so easily under the weight of trauma or loss. It's about unhealthy coping mechanisms. It's about ignorance being nowhere near blissful for the people around you. But even when these dynamics are torn apart, even when you know things will never be as great as they once were, there's still hope for healing and forgiveness. Yeah, things will never be like they were before. But that's just a fact of life we have to accept. Is it really that wrong for some of us to interpret these dynamics as more than platonic? Are we really forcing sexuality onto a character when there's in-game imagery and dialogue that implies he may not be cishet? Saying the headcanon is harmful to gay people actually does more damage than letting people come to their own conclusions. Femme gay men exist! They are more than just a gay stereotype. I think I've already proved my point that gender expression does not make someone gay, but gender expression is a huge aspect of the queer community, even if you don't identify as trans. Trust me, I go to an art school. I see the most wild-looking queer people on a daily basis, and I am unfortunately one of them. A lot of us find comfort in standing out, in expressing ourselves boldly. We've been silenced and ignored for so long, of course we're going to be annoyingly loud about it now that we're less likely to be murdered for conforming to heteronormative ideals. At least, those of us lucky enough to live in more accepting countries. Do gay people have to act inconspicuously for you to accept them? Are you irked by overt queerness because you don't want to see blatantly gay things invading your daily life? We don't owe you our silence. We deserve to take up space and take it up in a way that feels most comfortable to us. Just admit that you're being homophobic here and move on. I got a little heated there. Shit. So there may be a few of you out there that disregard my takes because I'm not a gay man and I've never experienced what it's like to be a gay man. Fair, honestly. The lesbian experience and the gay experience are very different, and it's important to acknowledge that. That's why I'm including a testimony from an anonymous friend who's agreed to help me out with this video. Thank you so much, by the way. So he states,
as a certified gay man in a relationship nearing 2 years, and being gender nonconforming, Basil is indeed a character that resonates heavily with me. And I think that the way he is written, you can most definitely infer it as queer coding. First of all, yes, feminine men can be straight, but you have to realize coding doesn't exist in a vacuum, and when a male character is queer coded, especially when written by a woman or non-man like Basil is, it will tend to lean into stereotypes sometimes. Even queer men writing queer male characters do this. The world and perception of queerness is affected by these things. Cis-het or even just straight feminine men exist, but to write Basil this way is a conscious choice by Omocat that has underlying queer themes, especially based off of the fact that Basil is based off of a gay male character written by an actual queer man. Secondly is his attitude towards Sunny. Now let me get this out there. Yes, guys can be close friends, and be just friends. Sunny and Keller are a good example. They're very close, and their in-game dynamic is solely platonic. However, Sunny and Basil's relationship goes beyond that. And I need to reiterate, Basil is based off of a queer character who, in the story they originate from, is very much in an extreme love with the main character and sees him as perfect. Basil also calls Sunny perfect. The parallels are pretty blatant. Basil goes above and beyond for Sunny, and while that may not be healthy, it's still queer coding, even if it doesn't seem like the most appropriate kind. And yeah, men can be close with no romantic feelings between them. But there's absolutely no straight man in the 2000s, especially in a religious small town, who would be comfortable calling other men cute and perfect, along with the fact that Basil is nearly always drawn near Sunny. And the Basil rush literally consists of them holding hands as a release energy. Queer undertones.
So yeah, I'm not alone here. In fact, there are so many people who find a lot of comfort in seeing Basil as queer. Just like we do.
9. Conclusion.
I can't say that Basil is canonically gay, or even attracted to men, because none of the characters in Omori have specified sexualities. But I hope I've shown that there's enough evidence to form a solid queer reading on the character. Do I think the queer coding is intentional? I literally have no idea. The Dorian Gray link suggests that the devs were somewhat aware of the homoerotic implications of Basil's actions, and it's not like they are opposed to having queer characters in the game. Look at trans icon and king, Captain Spaceboy. Maybe they did see Basil as queer, but didn't want to outright depict it in the game for fear of overshadowing the message about mental health, or getting backlash for having a very mentally unstable queer character in their game. I'm not an Omori dev, and I don't know Omocat, so literally everything in this video is just speculation. Once a piece of media is released into the wild, it becomes open to all forms of theories and interpretations of its messages and characters. Hopefully I've shown that a queer reading of the story from Basil's perspective is not only valid, but has merit given the content provided. If you made it to this point and disagree with literally everything I've said, that's fine. I'm not here to convince anyone that Basil is gay. I did this because I love queer media and looking at media through a queer lens. Because I'm a queer person, I guess. No, I'm literally queer, what the fuck. A lot of videos I see that talk about Omori and Basil's character ignore the queer subtext, and though I understand why and think it's important and valid to focus on the greater message of mental health in the game, I think the subtext is at least worth pointing out. That's why I'm here, screaming into a void about a fictional blonde boy who is mentally unstable and possibly in love with his best friend. Like, literally, what the fuck am I doing with my life? So thanks for watching and enabling me to rant about a topic I'm passionate about. If you'd like to see me talking about things like this or making videos in this style, let me know. I've always been a fan of video essays and like introspective analysis of characters and media. I'm just not really a writer or an analyst. I'm first and foremost a visual artist. So if you'd like to support my work, I have an Etsy store and literally all of my social medias are linked in my bio. I also take custom commissions of art. But yeah, no. This is so hard to do, like with my face and saying like, check out my shit. But I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks again for watching. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.